It's U of L Today on 93.9 The Phil. Here's your host, Mark Hebert.
Welcome to U of L Today with Mark Hebert. We've got an action-packed show for you today. And if you haven't been listening to our program in the past or hadn't heard it in the past, this is the show about all things U of L. We all know that U of L has a great athletic department and great sports programs, but we want to tell you about all the things that are going on at the University of Louisville involving research, great students, great faculty members, programming, outreach in the community. So that's what you're hearing on U of L Today with Mark Hebert. So today's program, well, later in the program today, we'll talk to Ruth Carrico, who along with other community partners is running a vaccination program for new refugees in our community. She's got some interesting stories, both inspiring and heartbreaking, about the newest members of our Louisville community and their ability to get health care in our community. But first, you've probably all heard the doomsday predictions about cyber attacks on U.S. infrastructure like transportation, power grids, and water supplies from China, or terrorists, or just plain hackers who think they're having fun doing these kinds of things. Well, I have more doomsday for you. They all could happen. Jeff Hieb from U of L's Speed School of Engineering. He teaches introductory courses, and he's doing research on the potential for cyber attacks on U.S. infrastructure and businesses and how it might be prevented. Welcome, Jeff.
Hello, Mark.
So is all hell going to break loose tomorrow when the Chinese tap into our dams and our transportation and systems?
I don't think I don't worry. I don't lose sleep at night over that.
Okay.
But it certainly is something that we need to be paying attention to.
All right. Well, tell me a little bit about your research, what you're working on. What are you trying to figure out?
So what we're looking on is how to secure critical infrastructure systems, and we've kind of been looking at specific infrastructures like the water sector and the dam sector. Although certainly the techniques that we apply are to a variety of things, including critical manufacturing. There's kind of been two recent events that have sort of in the news. Last year, there were two cyber attacks one against the electric utility in Ukraine, where a region in Ukraine, there's about 1.4 million people that lost their electricity for a couple hours, and that has been confirmed to be the result of a malware attack on the energy infrastructure there. And then also there was a case of a German steel plant where they got infiltrated, and basically the malware kept them from able to shut down a blast furnace, which caused massive damage according to the report, and we really don't know much more about that. So we've been looking at this for a long time. We've been doing research since about 2005. So critical infrastructures are in some ways similar, in some ways different to traditional IT systems. And so some of the differences is that the remote parts of those systems, the part that's out there next to the physical stuff that turns things on and off, need to be protected, and they're the least devices capable of having protection. That is, they tend not to have a lot of, they tend to have not a lot of computational power, and most of those have lifetimes on the order of 15 to 30 years. So they were developed that long ago, and they're not going to be replaced because they're expensive to replace. So what we've been looking at is trying to find a sort of bolt-on approach using a combination of hardware and software that would then be able to secure those endpoints and do so in a way that significantly enhances the security, doesn't introduce new vulnerabilities, and gives us a way to try to give some formal arguments about the security enhancements of those systems.
So in lay terms, for guys like me,
yes.
Does that mean you're trying to figure out a way to retrofit these systems like at dams and in water filtration systems, those kinds of things? That's what you're trying to figure out how to do that?
Yes, we're trying to figure out how to add something to it instead of. So we early on in the process, we started trying to build the latest and greatest. These devices are typically called generically field devices. The term often uses RTU, which stands for Remote Terminal Unit, or PLC, which stands for Programmable Logic Controller. So you can think about these as just being sort of little box computers. They don't have keyboards, they don't have anything like that. So we started off saying, well, we'll just build one of those that's secure. Well, we have an advisory board, and one of the things they really pointed out to us was that legacy systems is our real problem, and that's these older systems, and we can't just replace everything. And so they said, can you apply the approach you're doing for new systems and build us something that just straps on or bolts on and retrofits these? And that's what we've been looking at, and really trying to do that in a cost-effective manner. That's part of the challenge is that there's lots of those devices out there. We've got to build something that can do the security and not be massively expensive.
I'm assuming the Speed School of Engineering isn't the only engineering school or any first person in the United States to be working on this. I'm assuming everybody's trying to work on this, aren't they?
Everybody's trying to work. There's a number of problem spaces in this. So there's a lot of companies that have tried to kind of quickly develop traditional IT systems that you can stick in front of these. So I'm sure most people have heard of a firewall. So we've well-developed an IT infrastructure or traditional IT systems. So UofL has more than one firewall to protect its network. We have a perimeter firewall. We have some internal firewalls to protect our core devices. So some people have been looking at building, just taking that approach and applying it to field devices, because a lot of them now use the same network mechanics that traditional IT systems works. But there's some weaknesses there because these are specific to control systems, and so they have some nuances to them that are difficult to handle in that capacity. And there's still the possibility of getting in through those, that is, misconfigurations.
Well, they say all politics is local. I guess all cyber attacks would be local, so I'm going to ask you the local question. Louisville Water Company, MSD, who else can I think of here? Electric, LG&E.
LG&E, yeah.
All those companies and grids, are they in trouble or susceptible to cyber attacks, or have you been working with them?
We have been working with primarily with the Louisville Water Company. So we've done some testing there and worked with them to let us come in and kind of test some of the devices that we're working on. So I wouldn't characterize them as being highly vulnerable, but certainly all of those infrastructures are really vulnerable now on some level or another. The Stuxnet attack that happened, as well as the two.
That's the one in Germany you're talking about?
No, Stuxnet was the one that disrupted the nuclear centrifuges in Iran. So it was in the news in about 2007 and 2008 through 2010. And that really showed the ability of some very sophisticated malware to jump onto a control network without it being physically connected to the internet. And so most everybody, the big problem that we have now is making sure that at least everybody is not just like, let's plug our control system into the internet. And they know not to do it, and sometimes people either don't know they've done it or have not paid attention to that. And so they're all, and we've also talked to some people from LG&E, and they're certainly aware of all of these issues. So they're at least on the forefront. They're at least doing what I would say is all of the best practices now in terms of paying attention to that.
All right, we're going to take a little break. We'll be back to talk more with Jeff Hieb from the Speed School of Engineering about cyber attacks and how they can be prevented and what the Speed School is working on. You're listening to UofL Today with Mark Hebert on 93.9 The Ville.
My name's Natalie. I'm a junior studying communications at the University of Louisville. UofL has given me mentorship opportunities. I'm in the honors program. I've had a lot of opportunities through that. I got involved in Greek life. I'm a Cardinal ambassador, so I get to show people what I love about our university. And then I'm also on the student orientation staff, so I get to work with the incoming freshmen and calm any of their nerves about college, and just show them my passion for U of L and hopefully transfer that to them. Family is really what it's all about here at U of L. Go Cards!
Welcome back to UofL Today with Mark Hebert. I'm sitting here with Jeff Hieb, who is with the UofL School of Engineering, UofL Speed School of Engineering, and he's talking about cyber attacks and how to, again, in my words, retrofit old systems to prevent cyber attacks. How often do you think businesses and utilities in the United States are getting hit with some cyber attack and we don't even know about it?
So, very, very often. And so I think there's a more complex answer to that, and that is there's the difference between an attack and a scan. And so are they getting scanned all the time? That happens. There's people out there all the time jiggling the doors. And part of those will be running what I would call older attacks against things to just find systems that haven't been patched. Interestingly, for control systems, there's a website called Shodan HQ, which sort of, if you think about Google, Shodan is Google for hardware that's connected to the internet.
Okay.
And they look, and they also have a scan engine. So they actually look at some things. And one of the things, they have a project called Shine, and they looked at, was there active scanning for certain control system types of devices or protocols or ports? And they found a massive amount of scanning going on. So that would indicate that people are at least looking for the holes. Are there attacks going on? I think there's always loose stuff running around on the internet from older days. Are there really sophisticated attacks going on all the time? Probably not. But
now we're talking about big companies and big utilities. For the average business person out there that, maybe has a 200-person manufacturing shop, but they may manufacture something that's important to the U.S. economy. Should they be worried that China or some other place might be trying to launch some cyber attack, either to steal what their technology is or to shut them down in some way?
I think that they should be somewhat concerned for that, partly because of the asymmetry of this problem, which is you have to spend a lot of money to really provide a broad spectrum and complete protection. But basically, people can just walk around randomly and jiggle doors. So it doesn't cost much to see whether you have a vulnerability or not. So certainly people are looking. They might not be scrutinizing you, and they might not spend a significant amount of capital to attack you, but they're certainly looking for easy targets. It's one of the things in critical infrastructure that's happened, which is certainly we're protecting the highest value targets, and so now there's some concern about attacks going after what would be called lower hanging fruit or lower value targets because they're maybe not as well protected.
Is there any grant money out there from the federal government to Speed School and other places to target this problem?
Yes. So we've been receiving funding from the Department of Homeland Security since 2008. Our original funding was actually through the Department of Justice because it was prior to the creation and DHS actually being funded. And DOD also funds a great deal of cybersecurity for critical infrastructures because the DOD actually uses a lot of critical infrastructure within their own organization.
And besides you at the Speed School, who else is working on this problem? Or is it just you? You're a lone man in a corner working on this
I am alone. Dr. Jim Graham, who is retired from the Speed School faculty, still works with me, and that's who my primary collaborator has been for the past, about 10 years.
And can any students, if they come to the University of Louisville, did they get a chance to work on this stuff?
All of our funding has included funding students, and I have, we've actually have one student who has gone on and I think actually works in cybersecurity for critical infrastructure as his job.
So how far along, we'll kind of wrap this up here by asking this question. How far along are we in figuring out ways to, again, my word, retrofit these old computer systems and to go ahead and protect against major cyber attacks?
I would say we've made a lot of progress. There are some unique challenges. So I think we have the ability to do, say, what the current state, so there's devices like Tofino and a few others that can do some things now. So there's some commercial solutions that do, say, a level 1 retrofit. What we're working on, I think, might be called a level 2, and we're pretty close to being able to do something with that I think is an advancement. There's still a long way to go because of some of the challenges, and one example of that would be, I'm sure everyone is familiar with Windows Update and applying updates to their computer, right? So in a control system, you can't just apply patches unilaterally without concern. So that's a real problem, which is how do we deal with the fact that we can't always patch these systems at all?
With the changing technology and as they figure out new ways to attack.
Yeah, so that we can't do it fast or at all. So that's one that I think we're still a long way out on knowing how to fix.
Well, that's not very reassuring.
Well, it keeps all of us busy and motivated.
On our toes. All right, Jeff Hieb from the Speed School of Engineering, thanks for being here. Appreciate it. All right, when we come back, how UofL is helping new refugees meet the health care requirements in a new home. And you'll be surprised to hear where more and more newcomers to Louisville are coming from. We'll talk to Ruth Carrico when we come back after this.
My name is Taylor Young, and I'm a secondary education major with a minor in Pan-African Studies. And my UofL is knowing that I chose to come to a university where there are so many opportunities. Some of the things that I have experienced here at UofL are being on the Porter Executive Board and also just singing in the Black Diamond Choir. My UofL is knowing that I'm continuing a legacy that my parents set out for me when they both graduated from this university. And my UofL is always being a Cardinal. Go Cards.
This is our time to soar. We are an unstoppable force of innovation and academic excellence, solving the world's mysteries through research, stimulating growth in our community and beyond, and inspiring the next generation of leaders to build a better future for all of us. We are the University of Louisville. Watch us take flight.
Welcome back to UofL Today with Mark Hebert. We had the pleasure a few days ago of going over to a program that the University of Louisville is operating in regards to refugees. And the person who is heading up that program is Ruth Carrico. She's the founding associate director of the UofL School of Medicine's Global Health Initiative. Welcome, Ruth.
Thanks very much. Happy to be here.
Well, tell us about that program that we ventured over and took a little video of a few days ago. Tell us what that is. What are you working on?
Well, I guess maybe 4 years ago, we started work with the Kentucky Office for Refugees. because they said, we've got a lot of health data about refugees that are resettling in this community. So people that are already here and are now Louisvillians. Mm-hmm. And they needed some help in understanding the data. What are the health needs? What are some of the barriers and so forth? So when we looked at the data and provided a report, I looked at that as wonderful opportunity because the skill sets that are needed and the capacities that are needed are all within the capabilities of the various schools and colleges here at the University of Louisville. So one of the things that we identified first off was the need to ensure that when a refugee is resettled in the community, not only are they safe from us, but we are safe from them with respect to vaccine-preventable diseases. So we agreed to begin the provision of the immunizations that all resettling refugees need when they come to Louisville. So in order to do that, right off the bat, I think, gosh, if someone is coming and resettling as part of a refugee resettlement, just the very nature of being a refugee means that you are having to leave persecution. So it was a matter many times of life or death. So these people are coming then to our community, and then we're going to provide them with vaccines. So that means I'm going to stick them with a needle and give them a shot. And so our first thought is, this is a first step in establishing what we intend to be a long-term relationship. So we decided at that point that if we are going to provide vaccines, we need to provide them in the environment that the refugees themselves view as safe. So that's why we requested then the resettlement agencies that we actually develop an immunization process that is stationed in the resettlement agency.
And you have people coming from all over the world to Louisville, Kentucky, and they need these immunizations. Why?
Well, we want to immunize the incoming refugees so their protection against diseases that are common in the U.S. are the same as those within our community. So the same vaccines that you and I receive, we want to make sure that the resettling refugees receive. That way we can prevent in Kentucky from happening some of the things that have happened in other states. So, what pops immediately to mind is measles at Disneyland. Well, we don't want to have to deal with a disease that can be prevented through immunization. So our idea was, okay, we're going to provide these for the refugees at the resettlement site, and then we're going to begin to use the skill sets from within the university to help us do that in a very efficient, a very cost-effective, and a very safe manner. So we started off first with the School of Engineering, and I said, help me develop a process that I recognize it's very error-prone, so how do we make it error-proof? So we got great help in saying, this is how we think that, it would be beneficial if you structure it. And in fact, it was so successful, I had a group of 8 delegates from the U.S. State Department that came last year that said, we want to see what you do because it's so unusual.
So engineering was setting up a program to figure out how to get hundreds of refugees immunized. And we can talk about this here in a few minutes. So they go get their green cards and those kinds of things in an efficient manner, so that you could track them as well. Is
correct?
That
right.
What we're talking about?
So if we have, and this is a very common situation, we may have 4 refugees from the same family, and all the men have the same name. And you and I think we know when our birth date is, but birth date, the concept, may not be something that is recognized. So not only do we have 4 men with the same name, they all have the same birthday now. They're all assigned a January 1st, maybe the year is different, but a January the 1st birth date. And so if we're not on top of our game, then we can make an error. And the last thing that we want to do is have an error. We are here to protect them and our community, not to make an error. So the Speed School then helped us, how should we set this up? And then we were able to test this by having our collaborative activities. So we have medicine, nursing, public health that are all together, pharmacy, that are all together in providing these vaccines and helping us make sure that we do it correctly. Then we have to pull in those that understand the cultural context, those that speak the language. So we have 6 or 7 or 8 different disciplines from different schools, all there in our vaccine clinic at the same time. So it's a great opportunity for us to put our best foot forward to care for this population, while at the same time we learn.
We're talking with Ruth Carrico from the University of Louisville, and she's talking about the immunization clinic that UofL is running. How is it funded?
So we have funding
I mean,
specifically.
are these shots free, I'm assuming, for these refugees, right? Or,
Heck no. We don't, yeah, no, yeah. If only that were true. If only that were true.
Is it free for the refugees?
It is free for the
But
refugees,
it's
right,
not-
because
but
it's.
somebody's got to pay for it. So
Correct,
federal
correct. So
grant or-
it's your and my, it's our tax dollars. Therefore, we have an additional, as a taxpayer, there's an additional responsibility to make sure that this is done, again, in a very cost-efficient manner. So what we did, and initially then we agreed to provide the vaccines, and we purchased the vaccines. And then the resettlement agency would pay us back for vaccines, plus a very small administrative cost that we use to pay interpreters and so forth. Well, I began to work with the pharmaceutical companies, and they all have patient assistance programs. So we began then to figure out what are the ways then that we can partner with industry to provide us with free vaccines, so then we're able to pass along these cost savings to the resettlement agency. So this really was what the State Department was so interested in. It's like, why are you able to do this? And it's so darn cheap. And so high in terms of quality and the integrity and fidelity of the program.
And you're going to the places like Kentucky Refugee Ministries. The basement of Kentucky Refugee Ministries is where we saw you, and you had this clinic set up a few days ago. How are people finding you? I mean, how are the refugees figuring out, oh, I need to be at this place on such and such a day? Are they getting that from Kentucky Refugee Ministries and your other partners?
Right, they do. So when a refugee is resettled into the community, the two resettlement agencies, we have two, Kentucky Refugee Ministries and Migration and Refugee Services, kind of under the umbrella of Catholic Charities, bring the refugees to the community, and they have very intense caseworkers, a wonderful program to keep them involved. And so the process is they immediately have access to medical care. We need to make sure, look at things like, children coming in. What about lead levels? With what's going on now in Flint, that's really in the news. Well, we're looking at the same thing in newly arriving children and pregnant women. We're looking at chronic health conditions, diabetes, cardiovascular disease, and so forth. We want to know their health conditions so we can provide the best care for them. So we partner with the providers of these domestic health screens, of which we are one of those providers. So once we are able to get them into the system, we work very closely with the caseworkers at the resettlement agencies, because an incoming refugee has intense support for 8 months. So that means someone comes into the U.S., they have to get a job, first thing, get a job, learn the language, learn the culture, learn the U.S. healthcare system, all within 8 months. So can you imagine if you or I had to do that? It's a very daunting task. And so in order for this to work effectively, then we've got to coordinate efforts very closely, because, again, remember, the refugees are expected to be self-sufficient. So when they resettle, it's not like, come here and we will take care of you. They are expected to be up and running with a job, taking care of themselves very quickly. This can't happen without good health.
And you were telling me that there were a couple of problems that you were running into. One with children that were coming into our country from other places, their ability to get into school, number one, and then two, that the adults' ability to get a green card. So how does the immunization program fit into that, and how does it help with that?
That's excellent. So when I'll address the issue about the children first. So when children are resettled, the moment their little toe touches Louisville soil, they are covered, quote, covered through our Medicaid system. The problem is it takes a while for them to actually receive tangible evidence of this, like their card. Well, the cost of health care in providing health care to someone who doesn't speak the language, doesn't understand the culture, you've got a lot of background work to do. So the providers that see these children, it's not a quick in and out visit like the visit for children that are born here in the U.S., like your children and my children. So very time consuming. Therefore, we have to make sure that some type of coverage is in place for the providers to be paid. This is a business model. We expect to be paid and need to be paid for the work done. So if there is a delay and the child does not have their Medicaid card, then providers don't see them. Well, what the cascade effect is, then if it takes 3 months or 4 months or sometimes longer for children to be able to be seen by a primary care provider, then that means the child does not have immunization. We have laws,
And they can't get
and
to
they
school.
can't go to school, right? And so then everything falls apart, because then if kids can't go to school, parents can't go to work, and so it totally disrupts that whole self-sufficiency model. So the resettlement agencies came and said, "Is there anything you guys can do?" So we said, "Sure." We contacted the state, became a provider for the Vaccine for Children program. So we are able then to provide vaccines for the kids
Quickly.
and an immunization certificate, right?
So
They can get into school, kind of as an interim measure.
Right. And for the adults, they need it to get a green card, right, to stay
Well,
here?
ultimately, and part of that when you are resettled, the expectation is that is a first step toward their journey toward citizenship. So at 12 months, then they are eligible then to begin that process. So we provide them then with their vaccines. It is, again, through this supported program. So we are a civil surgeon, which means we have an office where we can make it a seamless approach for them so that we know testing has been done. So things like tuberculosis, we don't have a gap in making sure then that someone does not have active disease. We certainly don't want that. So we're able to close a lot of these loops to make sure that our resettling refugees, again, are in good health and represent then a minimal risk, no more risk than you and I would, to the community.
I should have asked this right off the top of the show. Who are the refugees coming to Louisville, Kentucky these days? Who are you seeing in your clinics?
We see, 15 or 20 different countries, but the primary refugees that we see at this point are Cuban, which people say,
See,
well,
that
that's Cuban,
surprised-
that is
well,
weird.
I told you that surprised the heck out of me the other day.
Our largest group of refugees are Cubans, and then we have those from Somalia, we have those from the Middle East, we're beginning to see Syrian refugees, a number of other African countries, and then many times it's where the refugee ended up. When they are fleeing their home country, they make their way to another country, so they may have kind of a secondary stopover. So we will see them from all over the world. Though we see Nepali refugees, we see Burmese refugees.
And you're also using this, as I understand, to get them into the health system to figure, this is kind of a first step to help them branch out and perhaps find other services as well, correct?
Right. And so when we see the refugees, just the health issues are very similar. They, have chronic health issues just like the Louisville population does, the U.S. population, but they're not all the same. All refugees do not have the same health conditions. So this is an opportunity for us to say, all right, what are we seeing on the initial assessment? And then we're able to, again, capture the expertise from across not only the medical side, the health sciences side, but nursing is of critical importance because many of these refugees, if not all, have a lot of socioeconomic issues. So if we're truly going to look at that whole notion of body, mind, and spirit, then we need to have the full spectrum of not only the health sciences, but this is a project that is incredibly cross-campus and very heavily weighted, not only in the health sciences, but on the Belknap campus as well. So our goal is to have a refugee-centered medical home where we will have these refugees, we will be able to follow them medically for long periods of time and see how well we're doing with this. Then that enables then students to participate from all different programs. It has the ability for faculty to work with us, identify questions that need to be answered, that help us with research and publication, and then, of course, enables us to continue to provide the service that is part of our three-legged mission.
All right. Ruth Carrico from UofL School of Medicine's Global Health Initiative. Thanks for being on.
Thank you very much.
Hang tight for just a minute. Before we sign off today, we always do a Did You Know segment, which is kind of a little bit of trivia about the University of Louisville. So here's a little bit of trivia that you'll enjoy. Another school at UofL that has a tight relationship with refugees is the Kent School of Social Work. Dean Terry Singer started working with Kentucky Refugee Ministries in 1999 when he opened his home to a refugee family who'd been displaced by the war in Kosovo. That began a relationship between Kentucky Refugee Ministries and the Kent School that survives today, including Kent alumni who work at KRM and a Kent practicum program that takes place there. So see, little tidbit, little Did You Know segment from the University of Louisville.
Very good, very good.
Go.
A lot of mental health issues, a lot of social issues, so a huge, very important project.
Very important, that's right. All right, you can find all podcasts of these programs at soundcloud.com/UofL, and video of many of these shows are on Metro TV. Metro Louisville's government access channel. If you have an idea about something or someone at U of L that we should feature on this program, feel free to email me at mark.hebert@louisville.edu. Thanks for listening to U of L Today with Mark Hebert on 93.9 The Ville, and go Cards.